Sometimes we learn our lessons the hard way and we find out we don't know what we think we know. And for many of us, self included, early on in the 2014 NFL season, we were ready to write off the New England Patriots. They were done. They were cooked. I was sitting there talking about blame Bill Belichick. People were questioning Tom Brady. It was not a good scene. After that embarrassing Monday night loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, they're sitting there at 2-2, and there's all types of questions. So the Patriots just set out and did what the Patriots so often do. They shut out all the noise, cut out all the bullshit, found a way to finish 12-4, win the AFC East, get home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and then find a way to beat the Ravens in the divisional round, smash the Colts in the conference championship game, and bam, the Patriots are back in the Super Bowl again for the 6th time under the Brady-Belichick regime. And this time they managed to get the job done for the first time since 2004, beating the Seattle Seahawks, having it handed to them, whatever the case might be. The New England Patriots are the Super Bowl 49 champions. That's all there is to it. There's 31 losers and 1 winner. And at the end of the day, the New England Patriots are the ultimate winners from the 2014 season. Something we maybe didn't envision happening, but it was exactly something that was going to happen. And I know early on in the 2014 season, I was talking about blame Bill Belichick for the different things because in part I thought Bill Belichick, the GM, was getting in the way of Bill Belichick, the coach, and not in a particularly good way. But as you start to go back and you look at the draft history for the New England Patriots, maybe it's not as bad as I once made it out to be. You look back at 2010. They got Devin McCourty in round 1, Rob Gronkowski, the best tight end in the National Football League, in round 2. You look at 2011, they got Nate Solder. 2012 brought him Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower. 2013 brought him Jamie Collins. 2014, they found a guy in the middle rounds like Brian Stork, the center out of Florida State. It seems like every year they've been able to find 1 or 2 contributors, guys that are able to come in and play a big role. It seems to be their thing. Every year they seem to be able to find 1 or 2 of those guys. Now, don't get me wrong. There are reasons why I thought what I did about Belichick, the general manager, because they've made some really bad picks, too. This is a team that accumulated a lot of draft pick currency, especially in that, late 2000s, early 2010 range. And they had a lot of misses. Jermaine Cunningham, big miss. Taylor Price, big miss. Ross Dowling, big miss. Tavon Wilson, big miss. Jake Paquette, big miss. I mean, these are all 2nd, 3rd round picks that basically contributed just about nothing. There's a lot of organizations that wouldn't be able to absorb that many day 2 failures in the draft like the New England Patriots were able to do. And frankly, they haven't gotten a lot out of the 2013 draft class. They haven't gotten much out of the 2014 draft class. But maybe when it comes to the New England Patriots, it's one of those things they finally addressed in the last offseason, the big needs they had in the secondary, bringing in a guy like Darrelle Revis and Brandon Browner. You still have Tom Brady. You still have Bill Belichick as a coaching mind. Late in the season, they were able to bring back LeGarrette Blount. Imagine that. Those key things that they were able to do, find the right guys to fit in the right places in the right ways, that helped them become champions. They've had some good successes in the draft. But like I said, they didn't get much out of 2014 at all with the long-term developmental prospects like Dominic Easley and Jimmy Garoppolo. And, outside of Stork, they really didn't get anything. Their 2013 class really didn't give them much. But at least they've been able to, seems like, pluck 1 or 2 guys every year that have been productive. And that has helped, in part, compensate for the huge misses that they've had in rounds 2 and 3 over the years. This was a costly offseason for the New England Patriots. There's no question about it. It wasn't a good offseason for them by any stretch of the imagination. It was one of these things that was bound to happen. Anytime your team wins a Super Bowl, usually you're going to lose some key pieces along the way. They let Vince Wilfork go after so many years of being that cornerstone of the middle of the Patriots defense. Gone are both Darrelle Revis and Brandon Browner. They're 2 big free agent acquisitions from the previous offseason. 2 of their running backs, and Shane Vereen and Stephen Ridley, 2 former mid-round picks, are gone. A guy they traded for last year that came in and played nicely for him in a pinch. And Keem Ayers, he's also gone too. So they've lost some key pieces, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Good thing for them, though, is they were able to re-sign guys like Devin McCourty and Patrick Chung, and they could franchise Stephen Gostkowski. So they were able to keep some key important players. And it's kind of the Patriot thing. Keep the younger guys and weed the older guys out, and that's exactly what they did here. And they didn't sit there and hamstring themselves to a long-term contract to a Darrelle Revis. And then they were able to find a gem in free agency, like a versatile player like a Jabal Sheard that could play some outside linebacker for them, that could line up some at a defensive end. The type of shit that the Patriots normally do. That's just what they do. So looking ahead to the 2015 NFL Draft, what are some of the biggest need areas that the Patriots should look to address or need to address? Well, I think you start off with the trenches, both on offense and defense. There's no question that losing Vince Wilfork hurts. I mean, you've still got Chandler Jones and Ninkovich on the defensive line. Maybe you'll get more out of a Dominique Easley, but they need a big space-eating defensive tackle. There is no question about that. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I argue they have needs both at the guard position and at the tackle position as well. They could use some athleticism. They could use some depth there. And they could use some guys that could potentially serve as upgrades over what they currently have. And then a lot of this other needs on this team, I think, are skill position type things on both sides of the ball. Obviously, losing Revis and Browner, the secondary was kind of weak outside of them at corner. Imagine how much weaker they are now. This is a position that could be addressed several times in the 2015 NFL Draft. And it's a position that the Patriots haven't particularly addressed all that well in the draft in recent years. And maybe it's something that they're going to have to focus on a little bit more. They could definitely, I think, use a young running back. Yes, you've still maybe got a Jonas Gray in the mix along with the LeGarrette Blount, 4th-round pick from last year, James White. But you did let Vereen and Ridley go. Maybe you brought back Brandon Bolden, maybe you envision a bigger role for him. But I think at some point in time, the Patriots need to look at having more of a bell cow type of guy and not just getting some type of veteran, kind of holdover like a LeGarrette Blount. Having that young type of feature back is something that Patriots offense could probably need. I still think they need something outside at wide receiver. Yes, you've got Brandon LaFell and Edelman and Amendola, but they could really use a young, big play vertical threat down the field, which is something they really don't have outside in the New England Patriots offense. In terms of the draft philosophy for the Patriots, they could do a lot of things. Sitting there at pick number 32, they could sit there and find a guy at a position like defensive tackle or corner that really fits a need for them that is also really good value, and they just decide to take him there. Also, again, sitting at that 32nd pick, there's a very good opportunity for them to be able to peel back and maybe accumulate some additional draft pick currency, which is always kind of the Patriots' MO, and I don't think that would necessarily be a bad idea for them to do. I would expect on the first 2 days of the draft for them to have a total of 3 picks, whether they stay at 32 or they peel back, and I would expect them in some type of configuration or order to address offensive guard, defensive tackle, and corner. I'd have to envision that perhaps their first 2 picks will be on the defensive side of the ball just based off of some of the losses that they suffered and some of the lack of depth they have on that side. It could be corner presents a better value with their first pick, and that might be the way they go. Maybe somebody like a Byron Jones, maybe somebody like a Ronald Darby perhaps. In terms of defensive tackle, there are some options there potentially for them in round number 2, but again, it's going to be a matter of what they look for in terms of a schematic fit. But the New England Patriots is one of these things. I do think they need to do a better job of getting some immediate contributors out of this draft because they're going to need them. Because, again, it doesn't seem like they've gotten a whole lot of the 13 class outside of Jamie Collins. And then the 14 class, they haven't really gotten much out of, at least at this point in time. They're going to need some key contributors. I think if this is a team that can address some of their big needs without having to sit there and reach, like sometimes I think they frankly have done in the past, this is a team that could do well for themselves to be right back in the mix again in 2015.